Sidebar is the official podcast of the Napa County District Attorney's Office. Hello, everyone. This is Carlos Villatoro with the Sidebar Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Today, I have a very special guest. I don't think I've had this guest before on the Sidebar Podcast, and that is District Attorney Allison Haley. Allison.
How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you took time out of your day to
Thank you.
be on the Sidebar Podcast.
Happy to.
Wow, it's been a busy month.
Yeah.
Hasn't it?
It has. Can
Yeah.
you see it in my eyes? Yep.
Well, it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And this is also a month in which we celebrate survivors and heroes. We're having an event this month. It is the Survivors Breakfast. Mm-hmm. And here to talk to me about it is Allison Haley, who originally conceived this idea, was it 2 years ago?
2 corrections. I did not conceive of it, and it's 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So
yes.
This is the third year
Yes.
that this Survivors Breakfast is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay. So, Allison, can you start off by telling us how this event came to be in Napa?
We had a deputy district attorney in the office named Stephanie McCumber. And right before she left for her very well-deserved retirement, after years of public service, both in Napa County and in Placer County, she said, you know what this office needs is to host a survivor's breakfast, something in some way to publicly acknowledge and honor the survivors that we have the good fortune of working with every day.
Mm-hmm. Now, part of the job that you guys have, especially as district attorneys, is to prosecute crimes and hold people accountable for those crimes in Napa County. But I've noticed here, especially since my time, that part of the mission also is to help people heal from these crimes.
I think people underestimate the nature of the relationships that we develop with the survivors as they work through the system. Mm-hmm. For the vast majority of cases in our office, they're called vertical prosecution. And that means that the same district attorney who filed the case is the same district attorney that goes through a trial or ultimately a sentencing. That can be months or even years of walking right next to survivors through what is an incredibly, oftentimes and unfortunately, stressful path. Mm-hmm. And I still have lots of relationships with survivors that I've worked with. They are particularly dear to our hearts.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, Allison, what is new this year about the Survivors Breakfast? Is there anything new? Or
yes, the biggest thing is probably that we have bumped the time. So mm-hmm. the first 2 years that we did it, we started at 7 a.m. and people did not care for that. It was far too early. I was wide awake because I'm a morning person. Yeah. But 2 years in, we finally listened, and I think this year we're starting at 7:30 this morning in the morning.
So that's good.
It is good. We're changing kind of the configuration of how that award ceremony is going to go, and of course, every year changes the survivors that we're honoring and the heroes that we're honoring.
And that is great. So, what would you say is the goal of the event?
I think the goal is to communicate to our survivors and to our allied professionals who are honored as heroes that we noticed that they went through something very difficult and very stressful, and we saw what they went through, and we are personally inspired by them as they worked through the system, that the community should know that you live with some of the greatest, most courageous people. And it's a moment to focus just on them. You know, this is a time that they have earned, and it's our privilege to be able to introduce them into the community.
Yeah, and alongside of that, alongside of the survivors, there are also heroes that are
Yeah,
being honored too.
So there's kind of two categories. There's survivors that are sometimes named victims in cases that have worked through the office, or they're witnesses in those cases that really did something courageous in their involvement in the case. But we also have another category of heroes, and these are people who either work in industries that are allied agencies. Maybe they are with LGBTQ services, maybe they're with the Monarch Justice Center, or maybe they work at the Napa County Sheriff's Department, that just had a hell of a year. They did something or worked on a particular case, or just showed a tremendous amount of either leadership or selflessness, and they deserve to be noticed.
Yes, they're courageous, and they're also a large part of the equation.
Yeah.
In the whole ecosystem of the criminal justice system as well. Now, it can't be very easy to pick your life up after being the victim of a crime. It's probably one of the worst experiences that any given person has to go through, unfortunately. And this is a reality that we face here in Napa. But there's a lot of value to having this celebratory breakfast for these individuals, would you say?
I mean, I just think they're so worthy of being honored. I think that a lot of their stories go unseen and unheard. There's not a lot of news coverage that's going to cover all the different instances of bravery that we get to bear witness to.
Right.
And if we can even for a moment not only introduce them to the community, but have those survivors recognize that people are there for them. We have representatives from all of our local government, members of the Board of Supervisors, someone from Bill Dodd's office, if not Bill Dodd himself, or Cecilia Aguilar Curry, or the congressman. The people that were being honored should know that they have the attention of these people, and that their stories are worth telling, and it's worth a morning to set aside just for them.
And how do you choose who's honored on this day?
So maybe 2 months before the breakfast, we send out kind of a public plea for nominations. Many of those nominations, maybe they might come from the public into our portal for information, or they're coming as nominations from either the deputy district attorney who handled the case, maybe they're coming from law enforcement, but they're coming from sort of all of these different avenues. And then we sit down with this huge list and we narrow it down, which is not an easy thing to do. I would love to have a full day to honor all of them. But a lot of it has to do, too, with who's in town. If they're on that list and they're in town and they're willing to come to be honored. Sometimes that winnowing down happens on its own.
So forgive me if I'm wrong, but there are 8 survivors and 10 heroes being honored?
I think so.
This
yes.
year? Yeah, okay. So that's a good amount.
That's good.
You guys must have had one heck of a time choosing.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's always difficult, but it's at the same time, it's this meeting where you're literally going down the table and telling one seemingly miraculous story after another. And our office processes over 6,200 cases a year, approximately 2,000 of them felonies. The remainder is misdemeanors. I don't know. I couldn't possibly keep up with every story that moves its way through our office.
Right.
This is a beautiful way to acquaint myself, sometimes for the first time, not always, but with the different stories that have come through and about how our staff has interacted with those survivors.
So how does the DA's office pull this off? I mean, do you guys pay for everything, or how is it funded? Can you tell me about that?
We are the incredibly fortunate beneficiaries of an outstanding community. The breakfast is held at Napa Valley College, which has generously donated a beautiful meeting space for us and has done so for 3 years. It is the foyer or the lobby of the Napa Valley Performing Arts Center. And to be there in the morning when the sun comes up, because it still is early in the morning, it's just a beautiful fall event. We always have it just before Halloween, so it's always fall themed. I'm not sure how we picked up, but I love it.
Yeah.
And then we have donors and sponsors. So we
Donors,
have
yeah.
donors that have provided pastries, and Napa Valley Roasting Company that donated coffee, and Garaventus Flowers, who is always just such a support for the DA's office, that provides flowers and things for our survivors to go home with. It really is everyone pitches in, because we all want it to be a beautiful morning for our survivors.
And right about now, our excellent media tech is putting up a graphic showing you all of the wonderful donors who have donated to this event, for which we are very thankful for.
Yeah.
So yes, please visit them, follow them on social media. If you see them around town, give them a high five.
Yeah.
We love our donors. Our donors are excellent, and we really couldn't pull this event off without them.
Not as beautifully as we do.
Right.
Certainly not.
So since you guys first started doing the Survivors Breakfast, and this will be my first year being a part of it, how would you say the event has evolved or changed?
Well, our very first one was still kind of in the throes of COVID. So it was, everyone sort of sat apart and talked loudly so that other people could hear them at the table.
Yeah.
Our numbers grew even in 1 year. And I think that this year it will be even higher in terms of turnout. We have tried to be very deliberate about being inclusive of our Spanish speakers and their families and guests. That is something that absolutely needed to be addressed, and I'm so thankful that it was brought to our attention so that we could address it.
Absolutely.
But I think every year feels different because the survivors and the heroes are different. But there's a richness to this morning for the DA's office that it's incomparable, and I look forward to it now every year.
Absolutely. So my final question,
Okay.
before I let you get on with your day. Why would you say it's important to have this event for survivors and heroes?
I think there's a couple of reasons. Again, first, I think it's important to communicate to survivors that they are worth celebrating. But there's a lot of events in Napa County, in the Napa Valley, a lot of galas and a lot of fundraising and a lot of attention. And this is on our calendars for no other reason than to focus our attention, even for a moment, on the pure acts of courage that we have seen throughout a year. It is unlike any other event. We are not asking for anything. We are there simply to lift up some of our most brave, and it's an honor. And
lifting up we will be doing now. This event is close to the public. It is a invitation only event. It's going to be taking place at Napa Valley College, and we're very excited to celebrate our survivors and our heroes on this event. And again, this is just part of the mission that the DA's office has in protecting the public and helping them heal, really, from these horrible events that happen in their lives. And I think that's going to be it for the Sidebar podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to see more, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get some more Sidebar podcast. Until the next one, we will see you next time. Thank you.